my fiancé said. I need some space for myself before the wedding. I said, okay, but she secretly cheated on me with her boss. So I spent $0 to ruin the whole wedding while she was eating her boss's banana. My name's Ethan. I'm 22. And a week after my girlfriend told me she needed space, I realized she was spending it on a beach with someone else, and I decided the truth deserved daylight. The text arrived on a Saturday at 9:12 a.m. right between my second cup of coffee and the quiet chore of bleaching the grout in the upstairs shower. Hey, Ethan. Things are overwhelming. I need space. Please don't contact me for a bit. I'll reach out when I'm ready. That was Maya, 29. Quick with a charming apology. Quicker with an explanation that sounded responsible. I stared at the message, watched the 3 bubbles appear and vanish, and typed what any rational adult would. All right, Maya, take the time you need. Then I set the phone face down on the counter and told myself to breathe. For as long as I can remember, I've prided myself on being measured. I'm the guy with the color-coded calendar, the one who remembers to change air filters every 3 months and knows the exact day car insurance renews. We'd been together 3 years. 18 months ago, she moved into my house, my name on the deed, my signature on the $2, $150 monthly mortgage. I added her to the smart lock, made a drawer for her skincare, and shifted my work calls so I could pick up her dry cleaning on Thursdays. It wasn't glamorous, just ordinary care, the kind that becomes the floor you stand on. There'd been distance lately, not a cliff, more like a hairline crack you pretend isn't widening. She'd come home later, claim deadlines, fall asleep with her phone face down. I chalked it up to stress. I told myself the mature thing was to give room. People get busy, she said, at least twice in January. And I nodded. We still split groceries. I still handled the utilities, $118 for water, $94 for gas, $106 for internet. The power bill that yo-yoed between $120 and $210 depending on the month. I kept receipt like a magpie keeps foil neat, labeled, proof I existed, and pulled my weight. Maya grew up nearby, the youngest of 2 sisters and, in her own words, the golden child. She said it as a joke, but it wasn't nothing. Her mom, Lillian, entreated small inconveniences like emergencies if they touched Maya. She needs this more than you. Lillian once told me when we argued about Thanksgiving plans, because Maya wanted to bounce between 3 Friendsgivings, her older sister, Tessa, used words like supportive the way some people use salt on everything. There's a flavor to a family that always sees one person as special. The air bends around them. Looking back, the pattern wasn't new. 3 incidents stayed lodged in my throat like pebbles. First, last spring, Maya borrowed my Amex to put a deposit on a yoga retreat, $600 due immediately. Balance later. I'll pay you back as soon as my bonus hits, she said, kissing my cheek. Phone already in hand. The bonus came. The reimbursement didn't. When I asked a month later, she smiled. Don't be so rigid. We're building a life. It evens out. I let it go. I told myself love is flexible. Second, in October, her car needed new tires. We were on the shoulder of I-95. Hazard lights clicking like a metronome for panic. Please, she whispered. Eyes wet. I can't ask my mom again. 4 Michelins, and $742 later. The relief in her voice was thick. You're my rock. 2 weeks after, she bought concert tickets, floor seats for $480 and said, it's an experience. I swallowed the resentment and told myself safety mattered more than the ledger. Third, the holidays. I bought us flights to her family city, $476 each, because she'd found a can't-miss cabin Airbnb for New Year's. And we agreed to split. 2 days before departure, she decided we should upgrade to a larger place so everyone can gather. She clicked confirm while I calculated in my head. The cabin jumped to $1. $380 for 3 nights. I'll Venmo you half, she said. The transfer never landed. When I asked on January 10th, she sighed. Can we not nickel and dime you make more? I told myself it wasn't worth the fight. I told myself it was generosity, not avoidance. A week before her space text, she started using a new word, alignment. I'm trying to find alignment, she'd say, staring past me. My therapist says I need to listen to my intuition. I'm not against therapy. I'm pro-therapy. But intuition became a shield that repelled any question. If I asked why she was home at midnight, she'd say, "My intuition said stay for one more glass." If I asked when we could sit down to plan our finances for the year, she'd say, "Let's not force it." I should have known what that meant. I should have seen it coming when her phone lived face down and her laughter lived elsewhere. The week after, the space message stretched like taffy long, sticky, oddly flavorless. I respected the boundary. No calls. No texts. I kept busy, mowed the lawn out of season. Alphabetized the spice rack. Wiped baseboards, I swear, had never been wiped. I went on runs that turned into walks because my legs were moving but my brain was stuck on replay. What did I miss? Did I push too hard? Was I too soft? The silence got loud. Then Friday came. February 7th. I sat on the couch with a bowl of leftover chili, scrolling without purpose, when a photo album popped up from a mutual acquaintance of Maya's, someone I'd seen at rooftop gatherings and pretended to know. The title was Innocent Enough, Surprise Romantic Getaway. I tapped because we're all curious. The first image was two champagne flutes, balanced on a balcony railing, with the ocean doing its eternal thing behind them. The second was a phone in the mirror shot, taken in a hotel room with a teal headboard and too many pillows. Maya's face, tilted just so, Among beside her, his arm around her waist, his name, in the captions, was Trent. My stomach dropped in stages, like an elevator that can't decide which floor is yours. I swiped again. There they were, walking barefoot on sand. Fingers laced. Another swipe, dinner with candles. His hand on the back of her chair like a claim. The timestamps lined up exactly with the week she needed space. Every line of her text became a punchline I hadn't agreed to. I stared until my eyes watered. I clicked into Trent's profile. Open. Public. Careless. Married. A toddler in his profile picture. A smiling woman tagged in family posts. Her name was Elise. Shock is strangely quiet inside your head. I didn't throw my phone. I didn't scream. I stood and rinsed my bowl. I walked upstairs and sat on the floor of the guest room. The one we never finished decorating. Among a half-built bookcase and a plant that kept thriving no matter how much we forgot to water it. This, I realized, was not an accident. It wasn't a slip at a bar. A blurry boundary at an office happy hour. This was a trip that required planning. Money. Time off. Lies layered over lies. She'd booked a hotel and packed dresses and told me to respect her boundary. The anger that came next wasn't loud either. It was cold. Precise. A line snapped, taut in my mind consequences. I thought about all the ways I'd made room, literal and figurative. My house. My accounts. My patience. I thought about the word alignment and how it had been weaponized to keep me in the dark. I thought about Elise. The woman in those family photos who had no idea why her husband's phone might be on airplane mode. I am not a crusader. I am not a saint. But I believe people deserve the truth when decisions are being made about their lives without them. I scrolled back to the album. Saved the photos to a folder labeled February. I checked the dates. The geotags. The captions. I took screenshots like a clerk, recording transactions. Making an inventory of hurt. My hands were steady. I remembered the 3 incidents, the retreat, the tires, the cabin, and realized they weren't random. They were a map to who I'd been in the story. Reliable background. Family helps. Family. Lillian had said at Thanksgiving when I balked at driving across town a 3rd time to ferry folding chairs. The phrase floated up now with a bitter edge. I wasn't family. But I'd been treated like infrastructure. What they didn't know was that I also pay attention. Little things. The way someone changes their laugh for different rooms. The way a caption chooses a pronoun. The way a hotel mirror always tells on you if you aren't careful about what's in the frame. I noticed the wristband from the resort. I noticed the reflection of Trent's wedding ring in the wine glass in one picture. I noticed the timing. Her "please don't contact me" landed exactly 23 minutes after their first airport check-in photo. I closed the album and stared at the ceiling until the white turned into constellations only I could see. There are thresholds inside ordinary lives. You don't know you're at one until you take a breath, and it feels different. Cleaner. I wasn't going to beg for clarity. I wasn't going to chase someone who chose secrecy. I wasn't going to be an accomplice to someone else's illusion. If Maya wanted space, she could have all the space she wanted. But Elise deserved a map. The next morning, Saturday, February 8th. The house felt unnaturally neat. I made coffee. I opened the curtains. Sunlight cut squares on the hardwood. I sat at the kitchen island, where we usually argued about whether cilantro tastes like soap, and opened Facebook. The status box waited. My heartbeat didn't rise. I wrote like a person, writing a simple memo. Heard you needed space. Maya. Looks like you found it. Hope it was worth it. And Elise thought you might want to see how your husband Trent spends his business trips. I attached 3 photos. Not the ones that could be argued away. The hotel mirror selfie. The beach hand-holding with a clear date stamp. The dinner shot with his hand on her chair, and the resort logo in the corner. I tagged Elise because the truth should not have to travel by rumor. I read the post once. Twice. It wasn't vindictive in tone, it was factual. Restrained. Undeniable. I hit post. For 5 minutes. Nothing happened. The blue bar crawled. Then my phone hummed on the counter. Once. Twice. A trickle became a stream. Unknown numbers. Direct messages. A voicemail icon I hadn't seen in months. I watched the notifications stack like falling tiles and didn't touch a thing. Maya had asked for no contact. I was honoring it. The air in the kitchen felt cooler. Lighter. A line had been drawn. Finally. With a permanent marker. I changed the locks that Monday, February 10th, because the boundary between a house and a feeling is a front door. I kept a box of her essentials ready because I am not cruel. I am organized. A sweater she loved. The passport she insisted on keeping in the junk drawer. The mug with "but first." Coffee and looping gold. I wasn't looking for a confrontation. I wanted calm. Calm doesn't arrive. You build it. Screw by screw. Policy by policy. If you'd asked me then whether I wanted things to explode, I would have said no. I wanted an adult conversation that acknowledged reality and made choices accordingly. But I also knew people rarely choose the clean path when a messy one lets them keep a story they prefer. I stood at the window that night. Looked at the dark rectangle where our TV reflected the room. And I felt something that surprised me, not weakness. Not humiliation. Readiness. The kind you feel when a storm you've been smelling on the air finally rolls in and, for once, you've closed the windows and brought the plants inside. I should have known the phones would start ringing within the hour. I should have known panic hates oxygen. But in that quiet afterward, between the post and the fallout, there was a sliver of peace, so sharp it almost hurt. It told me the truth was going to do what it always does. Slowly at first, and then all at once it was going to rearrange the furniture of our lives. And this time, I wasn't the one who needed space. I had something better clarity. The post had been up for 40 minutes when the real noise began. At first, it was the familiar tremor of a notification. Then a ripple. Then the steady percussion of a phone losing its mind. Numbers I didn't recognize. Area codes I hadn't seen since college. A few local. One blocked. I set the phone on Do Not Disturb and watched the banner parade across the lock screen, like headlines I hadn't asked to read. The coffee I'd made went cold while I counted rings. At 1021 a.m. The first voicemail landed from an unknown number. I let it play on speaker while I rinsed a plate. A man's breathless voice, Ethan. This is Trent. We need to talk. Take the post down. You don't understand the context. There's more to this. Call me back right now. He sounded like someone who'd locked his keys in his car, in the rain. I stopped the message halfway through and deleted it. There was nothing I needed to hear from him that wasn't already visible in those photos. At 1024 a.m. Another. Ethan. Seriously. Take it down. You're hurting people who had nothing to do with this. The audacity of that line made me laugh soft. Humorless. The idea that the harm originated with me pressing post. Not with 2 people booking flights under the word alignment. Told me everything I needed to know about his worldview. Delete. At 1032 a.m. Maya. The voicemail started mid-breath. Fontique. What did you do, Ethan? What did you do? Take it down right now. This isn't funny, this is my job. My life. You've made me look like. She cut herself off. Regrouped. You've humiliated me. Trent's wife is calling me. Our friends are texting. You need to fix this. Tell people it was a misunderstanding. I could picture her pacing. One hand on her forehead. Performing regret rather than sitting in it. The pronouns were revealing my job. My life. Not our. Not even a plural to suggest we had been partners in anything. At 1040 a.m. Maya again. And the tone flipped to pleading. Please. Ethan. Please. I'm begging you. You're a good person. I know you are. We were on a break. You said you understood. I needed space to think. The words "we were on a break" walked into my kitchen like a stranger who thought they lived there. I hadn't said that. I had said I'd give her time. Time is not permission to rewrite the rules without notice. By 1100. The group texts and third-hand emissaries arrived. Naomi, one of Maya's friends who posts daily about kindness, sent a long paragraph about privacy and compassion. Dragging this public isn't the way, she concluded, followed by a heart and a dove. I replied once. Short. I told Elise the truth. That's all. She typed 3 dots. Pause. 3 dots again, then left me on read. 11:06. Tessa. Unbelievable. Her message began. You've always liked control. But this is a new level. Maya is in pieces. If you loved her at all, you'll take that down and apologize to everyone involved. I stared at the screen and felt a calm spread through my chest, like ink in water. The accusation of control was ironic from a family that rearranged holidays based on one person's whims. I didn't respond. Some messages are traps baited with your own decency. The calls kept coming. HR numbers. Maybe. Numbers with no names. Maybe burner apps? I silenced the phone and went about the Saturday tasks I could control. Laundry. Vacuum lines in the living room rug. A run that turned into a walk again, because my legs didn't trust my mind yet. I bought light bulbs and felt grateful for the anonymous mercy of a hardware store on a day like this. Shortly after noon, a new notification message request from Elise. Her profile picture matched the family photos I'd seen on Trent's page. Same warm smile. Same kid with a bowl cut by someone who loved him. Not a salon. I opened it. Bracing. Thank you. She wrote, I don't know you. I don't know the full story. But I appreciate you telling me. I'm sorry you're going through this. 2. 10 simple sentences followed about clarity. About shock. About an appointment with a lawyer next week. No threats. No theatrics. A steadiness that hurt to read because this was the person who should have been protected from surprises. Not made the last to know. I typed back, I'm sorry you had to find out like this. If you need screenshots or dates for your records, I'll share what I have. Take care of yourself. She replied with a single blue heart and the word please. I sent a zipped folder labeled February. By mid-afternoon, the post had traveled further than I expected. The comment count climbed to a number that made my stomach wobble if I looked directly at it. So I didn't. Friends of friends weighed in with the confidence of people who know a fraction and believe it's the whole. Some defended Maya with phrases like, we don't know what happened inside their relationship. Others turned it into a morality play, scored by likes. I avoided the comments. This wasn't for an audience. This was for Elise, and, if I was honest, for the version of me that had swallowed so much, be flexible that I couldn't taste my own needs anymore. The evening brought a different wave. Trent again. This time by text. All caps take it down. Then we can make this right. I'll talk to Elise. You talk to Maya. We'll say it was complicated. It was not complicated. It was very simple. 2 adults made a decision. They did not want the light that comes with decisions. People rarely do when shadows have been kind to them. Maya shifted from pleading to bargaining, to blame in record time. I told Trent you and I were basically over, she said in one voicemail. Voice edged with anger. Now, I thought you were mature enough to handle a grown-up pause. You're embarrassing yourself. The projection would have been funny if it weren't so predictable. Another message. Late. Ragged. Please. Ethan. I'll come home and we'll talk. We'll figure it out if you take it down. The offer was a mirage, nothing behind it but heat. I didn't answer. She'd asked for no contact. I was, perhaps for the first time in months, honoring exactly what she asked for. Around 9. My phone buzzed with a number that turned out to be my boss. My stomach tipped, anticipating a complaint. Instead, Victor's voice was dry and measured. You okay? He asked. And I exhaled. He'd seen the post, apparently. It had reached our local bubble and wanted to check in. If anyone brings this to HR, loop me in, he said. Take Monday if you need it. Projects can wait. It's astonishing how a single measured sentence can feel like a plank under your feet when you thought there might be air. On Sunday, the ripple hit church friends. Gym acquaintances. The barista who knows my order. A few reached out with quiet solidarity. Been there. You're not crazy. Proud of you for telling the truth. Those messages mattered more than I expected. They didn't fix anything, but they made the house feel less like a bunker and more like a place I'd chosen to live. Late that night, another message from Naomi arrived. Maya's a wreck. It read. She said you locked her out and threw her out with nothing. Is that true? I took a breath and typed. Her things are safe. Her essentials are boxed. I changed the locks because it's my home, and I need boundaries. She can schedule a pickup through a third party. I won't engage directly. Naomi replied with a single, okay. No emoji. No lecture. Maybe that was the beginning of someone realizing the story they'd been fed had holes. Monday morning. I called a locksmith to rekey the back door as well. The tech whistled under his breath while he worked. An off-key tune from the radio. When he finished, he said, "Rough weekend." I almost laughed. You could say that. He handed me a small zip bag with 3 new keys and, unprompted, said, "My ex once changed the locks on me. Best thing she ever did." I didn't ask for the story. We both nodded like we'd shared something without needing to say the sentences out loud. By Tuesday, the panic calls slowed to a simmer. The people who believed their own narratives doubled down. The people who traffic in truth adjusted. Elise sent a brief update she'd spoken to an attorney. She was staying with her sister. She appreciated the timestamps I provided. It helps to have something solid in a week that feels like waves. She wrote, "I wish there were more I could do." There wasn't. Sometimes the most decent thing you can do is stop adding motion. That afternoon, Tessa left a voicemail that belonged in a museum of entitlement. "I've spoken with Mom," she began, which is never a sentence that leads anywhere good. "We both feel you owe Maya an apology and a chance to collect her belongings with dignity. You've always had a rigid streak. Ethan, let it go." I saved the message. Not because I needed proof of anything, but because tone is evidence. 2. Dignity, I thought, is what you protect. Before you book the room with the teal headboard, I slept for the first time in days on Wednesday. Woke to sunlight, crawling across the floor, and, for the first few seconds, I forgot there was a crater where a relationship used to be. Then I remembered and felt both lighter and sadder. Like taking off a heavy coat you'd worn so long, you forgot it was weighing you down. Near noon, my doorbell camera pinged for the first time with a human form instead of a package. I watched the feed from my phone, a person in sunglasses lingering near the porch. They glanced at the lock, stepped back, and took out a phone. No knock. They left. A reconnaissance. Not a storm. It made the hairs on my arms rise anyway. I texted a neighbor to keep an eye out and went back to my spreadsheet. Numbers marching across cells in tidy obedience that felt deliciously boring. Maya's last message that day was a simple, "We need to talk. Face to face." I stared at the screen until it dimmed and then finally wrote back, "Everything needs to go through a third party. Email only." It wasn't dramatic. It wasn't performative. It was the adult sentence that should have existed in our lives months ago, clear. Enforceable. Not open to interpretation. I thought the loudest part of this would be the comments. I was wrong. The loudest part was the silence after you set a boundary and refuse. Absolutely refuse. To move it a single inch. It makes people reveal themselves. Some step closer with respect. Some pound on the edges. Angry the world no longer rearranges for them. I didn't know which version I'd get when Maya finally came to collect her things. I did know I was ready. That night, I switched the porch light to a brighter bulb and set a labeled box by the front hall table passport. Sweater. Mug. I made a checklist because checklists are one of the few ways I know to turn dread into steps. There was a steadiness in that small act. I wasn't punishing. I wasn't posturing. I was preparing. The difference matters. Outside, a winter wind pushed through the trees and rattled the loose screen on the upstairs window I still hadn't fixed. Inside, the house felt newly mine, not because I'd won anything, but because I'd stopped losing myself by degrees. Somewhere across town, plans were being made. Calls placed. Stories burnished for sympathetic ears. I could almost hear the prelude to the next move. When my phone finally pinged with a calendar invite from an unknown address subject line pickup, I accepted. Saturday. 4 p.m. A name I didn't recognize listed as the driver. No, Maya mentioned. No, not. Just a time. A place. À l'aplomb. For the first time in a long time. Something in this mess was exactly what it said it was. I put my phone face up on the counter and let the quiet settle. The storm was about to reach my front door, and I had already decided this time. I wasn't opening it. Saturday arrived, gray and windless. The kind of afternoon that felt suspended, like the world was holding its breath. I'd spent the morning clearing space near the entryway, stacking the boxes labeled asterisk asterisk Maya, misc. Asterisk asterisk, closet asterisk asterisk. And asterisk, asterisk, bathroom asterisk, asterisk in a neat row by the wall. Her suitcase, the red one with the broken zipper pull, sat on top like a crown. Everything inside was clean. Folded. Neutral. I wasn't angry anymore. Just thorough. Closure doesn't always look like peace. Sometimes it looks like masking tape and Sharpie labels. At 3:47 p.m., My doorbell camera pinged. A sedan idled at the curb. A man stepped out first tall, wearing a cap, scanning the driveway. Then the passenger door opened. And there she was. Maya. Her hair was pulled back in a messy knot. And she wore the same gray hoodie she used to steal from me when she was cold. For a second, my chest tightened from habit more than longing. She looked smaller than I remembered. But maybe that's just what guilt does. It folds people inward. She walked up the path, tried the old key. And when it failed, rattled the handle. Then came the knock. Ethan. Open the door. She called. Voice too bright at first. Like she was pretending this was normal. When silence met her, the tone cracked. Ethan. I know you're in there. This is my home too. No. It wasn't. My name was on the mortgage. My signature on every payment stub. I'd invited her in once. And she'd decided the invitation was ownership. I watched from the camera feed as she shifted from pleading to anger. You can't lock me out, she said, her voice rising. I have rights. A second car pulled up. Out stepped her sister Tessa and their mother. Lillian. Wrapped in indignation like a coat. Lillian marched right up the steps. Phone in hand. Ethan. She barked toward the door. Open this immediately, you're being cruel. Maya has belongings in there. She deserves access. I sat at the dining table with the laptop open but untouched. Listening through the speaker. Tessa joined in. We're calling the police if you don't open up. This is harassment. Harassment. The word almost made me laugh. For changing locks on my own house. After my ex-girlfriend disappeared for a week with someone else, I stayed silent. They banged on the door for 10 minutes. Alternating between yelling and crying. Maya's voice wavered. Ethan. Please. Just talk to me. We can fix this. Then her mother. You've always been so cold. Ethan. Do you feel good doing this to her? I didn't feel good. I felt done. Finally, the car engine started again. Tessa guided their mother back inside. Throwing one last glare at the doorbell camera. The sedan pulled away. The quiet that followed was heavier than any noise. I poured a glass of water and stared at the boxes by the wall. They looked like evidence in a case no one wanted to try. I thought of all the times I'd been told I was too rigid. Too logical. Not spontaneous enough. Those qualities were now the reason I wasn't caving. Structure. It turned out, was survival. That evening, my phone lit up again. Unknown numbers. Same area code. This time, they didn't bother with calls. They went straight to character assassination. Texts from mutual acquaintances trickled in. Is greater than heard. You kicked Maya out with nothing. That's brutal. Man. Is greater than. She said you're controlling. That you embarrassed her because she wanted independence. Is greater than Brandon's wife. Is going crazy. Threatening her job. Why'd you have to drag everyone into it? The mental gymnastics were impressive. In this rewritten script, Maya was the victim of a controlling partner. And I was the jealous ex who couldn't handle freedom. I responded to a few messages with the same simple reply, check the post. The photos tell the story. Most of them didn't text again. Truth doesn't require debate, it just waits for daylight. But the smear campaign wasn't finished. Tuesday morning. I got a call from HR. Ethan. My manager. Victor. Said carefully. We received an anonymous email claiming you've been acting unstable and created a hostile environment for a colleague named Trent. The absurdity nearly made me laugh out loud. Trent doesn't even work here. I said. Victor sighed. I figured as much. But HR has to follow procedure. I showed him Elise's message and the screenshots. The so-called complaint died in an afternoon. But the fact that someone tried to weaponize my career confirmed how desperate they were. 2 days later. My car parked neatly in front of my house, got a bright orange sticker slapped on the window, times reported abandoned vehicle. Asterisk, I peeled it off. Called the city. Explained. And the operator chuckled. Happens more than you'd think. I knew exactly who had called it in. Then came the voicemail that sealed their sense of entitlement. Lillian's voice? Brittle and self-righteous Ethan. After all Maya did for you. You owe her compensation. She invested emotionally and maintained your home. We're requesting hen or can't. 000 for pain. Suffering. And loss of residence. Be a gentleman and make things right. I actually laughed an ugly, exhausted sound that filled the kitchen. She sometimes bought bread. I paid for the mortgage. The car insurance. The utilities. The vacations. But sure. Emotional investment must count for 50 grand in their accounting. I saved the voicemail under a new folder times harassment evidence. By Friday, I realized I'd been reactive long enough. It was time to move from defense to offense. So I called my attorney friend. Marcus, a meticulous, quiet man who believes in paper trails more than passion. I explained everything. Forwarded screenshots. Audio clips. Timestamps. He didn't even sigh. Classic deflection. He said, "We'll handle it." That afternoon, we sent out 3 cease and desist letters, one each to Maya, Tessa, and Lillian. The documents detailed harassment, defamation, and property interference. They were written in that calm, lethal, legal tone that sounds almost polite until you read the last line. Times, failure to comply may result in civil action and restraining orders. We attached the voicemails and texts as evidence. Marcus smiled faintly when he clicked send. They'll either go quiet or escalate once before realizing you're serious. He was right. The next morning, another email came in. This time from Lillian again. Maya will be collecting her belongings tomorrow at noon. You must allow her entry. Marcus drafted the reply for me. Is greater than asterisk. Mr. Ethan, last name, is willing to provide Maya's personal items once she provides a detailed list. He will pack them. And a neutral third party, not family, may collect them from the curb at an agreed time. There will be no direct contact. Items not claimed within 7 days will be considered abandoned and disposed of. Within an hour, another voicemail arrived. Lillian again. Furious. You can't do that. What if you break her things? What kind of man hides behind a lawyer? Marcus listened to the recording, then chuckled. The kind of man who's done being manipulated. He said, as for the other half of the equation, Trent and Elise karma was moving faster than I expected. Elise filed for divorce the following week, naming Maya as the third party in her petition. Public record. Marcus reached out to her lawyer, offering my cooperation and evidence. Maya's text asking for space. The screenshots. Her own voicemails, admitting panic. Apparently, Trent tried to argue he'd been emotionally separated. The timestamps destroyed that story in seconds. Their employer, a conservative firm with zero tolerance for scandal, placed him on administrative leave. By the time I heard from Elise again, he'd been let go. Maya didn't escape either. Word spread fast in their industry. Clients don't like whispers of affairs with married coworkers. Her contract work dried up. She was back at Lillian's house by the end of the month, nursing the outrage of someone who thought consequences were optional. That $50, 000 demand. Gone. Vanished without a trace, after Marcus mentioned times defamation damages asterisk. I'd thought revenge would feel fiery. But it didn't. It felt clean. A slow unwinding of lies, each replaced by documented truth. They wanted chaos. I gave them structure. They wanted noise. I gave them paperwork. One evening, as I watched the sunset spill gold over the fence, I caught myself almost smiling. Not because I'd won, but because I'd finally stopped playing a game I never agreed to. The phone stayed quiet for 3 days after that. Then one message appeared, an email from an unknown address titled, Times Closure is greater than. You didn't have to ruin me. It began. You could have just let me go. I read it twice, then closed my laptop. She was right about one thing. I could have let her go, but she'd already gone. I just turned on the light so everyone could see the exit. The next part of the story wasn't about her anymore. It was about what comes after the silence. The repair. The unexpected peace that shows up once the shouting stops. And somewhere deep down, I knew the saga wasn't entirely over. People like Maya don't accept endings, they look for loopholes. But this time, I had locks on every door. Literal and emotional. I was ready for whatever knock came next. By the start of March, the chaos had finally thinned into something. Quieter. But sharper. The kind of quiet that hums right before a new round begins. I'd assumed the cease and desist letters would draw a line everyone could see. But lines mean nothing to people who've never believed they should have boundaries in the first place. On a gray Thursday morning, my doorbell camera caught movement again. Not Maya this time, Tessa. Her sister. She stood on the porch holding a manila envelope like it was a peace offering. I didn't open the door. Through the intercom, I said, anything you have for me can go in the mailbox. She huffed, muttered something about me being paranoid, and slid it through the slot. Inside the envelope was a list of essential belongings Maya wanted back. It read like the inventory of a small department store, half the kitchenware, the area rug she'd picked out but I'd paid for, My television shared entertainment property. And a note at the bottom. Times emotional damages pending discussion. Marcus Milavier called it creative writing. He drafted a response that was short and surgical. Times items reasonably identified as Ms. Last name's personal property will be returned. Items purchased by Mr. Ethan remain his. Collection to occur on March 10th. Supervised by third party. No entry permitted. When I sent the email, the reply came not from Maya but from her mother, Lillian. The tone was pure theater. Times. You can't treat people like criminals for wanting their own things. What if you break her personal items? How will you compensate her for distress? Asterisk. I didn't answer. Marcus did. His email was 2 sentences long. Times. All interactions will be documented. Please conduct future communications through counsel. That weekend, the man with a van arrived. Tall, quiet, efficient. He handed me a clipboard, took the boxes from the porch, loaded them one by one, and left. No drama. No shouting. Just the sound of tape sliding against cardboard. A few hours later, Tessa sent a single message. We have everything. You'll regret this. Maybe once. I would have worried. Now it felt like a period at the end of a long, loud paragraph. But the peace didn't last. Monday morning. Marcus called again. She's filed a small claims notice. He said. Voice steady. Says you disposed of sentimental items not on her list. I almost laughed. Like what? A handmade mug? He replied. Scanning. And something described as a vision board of emotional growth. She is seeking de Note for distress. It would have been absurd if it weren't so exhausting. Marcus handled it, filed a counter with the receipts and the timestamps showing I'd followed the process to the letter. The case evaporated in days. Dismissed before I even had to step inside a courthouse. Still, the sheer creativity of her attempts told me one thing: she wasn't done. Then came the twist I didn't expect. Elise, the wife, emailed me again. Short. Formal. But warmer than before. Asterisk. The divorce is proceeding. Thank you for cooperating. Your documentation made a difference. She didn't elaborate, but when I checked the public filings later that week, it was all there in black and white: adultery, named. Dates matching the vacation. Evidence included. Trent's life was crumbling faster than even I'd imagined. He'd lost his job. Word spread in his industry. The company released a bland statement about maintaining integrity. Rumor had it he was staying with his brother in another state, trying to salvage what he could. And Maya, well, her name started popping up in whispers. 2. Clients dropped her. Colleagues blocked her. Even the friend who'd once told me to be kind unfollowed her quietly. I wasn't celebrating her downfall. But I'd be lying if I said there wasn't a grim satisfaction in watching accountability finally land where it belonged. That satisfaction didn't last long. Though, one evening, while I was making dinner, a private number lit up my screen. Against my better judgment, I answered. It was Maya. Ethan, she said softly. Her voice sounded different, fragile. Almost polite. I'm not calling to fight. Then why are you calling? I asked. A pause. Everything's fallen apart, she said. My job. My reputation. Even Tessa's angry with me. I didn't realize how far this would go. You didn't have to involve lawyers. I leaned against the counter, letting the words hang there. You didn't have to lie, I said quietly. I made a mistake, she said. A bad one. But you didn't have to destroy me. I didn't destroy you, Maya, I said. You did that yourself. I just stopped covering it up. For a moment, all I could hear was her breathing uneven. Quick. You don't understand, she whispered. You were supposed to love me enough to forgive me. There it was again, the assumption that love meant immunity. That actions came without consequences, as long as the right person forgave them. I didn't raise my voice. Love doesn't mean pretending something didn't happen, I said. And forgiveness doesn't mean letting you rewrite the story. She exhaled shakily. I hope you're happy, she said finally. I'm not happy, I replied, but I'm free. Then I ended the call. The next morning, I blocked the number. After that, and things shifted again. But this time in my favor. Elise's lawyer sent me a formal acknowledgement. My screenshots, timestamps, and original post had directly refuted Trent's defense and helped secure Elise a favorable settlement. Reading the document, I felt something I hadn't felt since. Before all this, began relief that wasn't tinged with bitterness. Trent was reportedly living on his brother's couch, selling his car, trying to start over somewhere quiet. Maya, meanwhile, moved back in with her mother full-time. Every once in a while, I'd see a vague post from her new account, quotes about resilience, healing, and toxic partners. I didn't engage. Let her build whatever narrative she needed to survive it. The truth no longer required my attention. Marcus called one last time. "I think this is the end of it," he said. "They've gone silent since the court filing. Keep the documentation just in case. But I doubt you'll hear from them again." And he was right for a while. 3 weeks later, an email arrived in my inbox from a name I didn't recognize. The subject line read, "Asterisk perspective. Asterisk. The body was 1 paragraph long. Is greater than asterisk. You think you're the hero in this story. But all you did was expose everyone's worst moment. People make mistakes. You just made sure theirs went viral. I hope that keeps you warm at night." No signature. No address. But I knew it was her. I stared at it for a long minute. Then closed the laptop. I wasn't going to respond. There was nothing left to defend. Some people mistake silence for guilt. I'd learned it can also mean peace. That night, I walked through the house, my house, and noticed how still it was. The air didn't feel heavy anymore. The rooms that once echoed with arguments and forced apologies were quiet in the best way. I'd painted over the scuff marks on the hallway wall where her mirror used to hang. I'd replaced the curtains she'd chosen with simple white ones that let the light in. For the first time in months, it felt like a home again. I didn't set out to destroy anyone's life. I didn't set out to be some avenger with a moral scoreboard. I just stopped letting lies live rent-free under my roof. And somehow, in the process, everyone who built their comfort on deception watched it collapse. Marcus once said something I didn't understand until now. Justice isn't about punishment, it's about balance. By the end of March, the scales were even. Maya and her enablers had finally gone silent. No calls. No emails. No more midnight knocks. The legal boundaries had teeth. And they'd finally bitten deep enough for everyone to back off. And as for me, I started sleeping again, really sleeping. The kind where you wake up rested. Not haunted by what-ifs. I bought new furniture. Took up running again. Even signed up for a photography class I'd put off for years. Sometimes, when the house is still and the street outside hums with distant traffic, I think about how close I came to letting guilt pull me back in. How easy it would have been to open the door that first day. To let her tears write the next chapter. But I didn't. That, I've learned, was the real act of revenge. Not shouting. Not posting. Not even winning in court. It was simply refusing to play the part they'd written for me. The war was over. The battlefield was empty. And in the silence that followed, I could finally hear something I hadn't, in a long time, my own life moving forward. It's strange how quiet the end of a storm can be. Months passed. April folded into May. And the noise, the calls, the threats, the whispers faded into nothing but memory. The house was mine again. Not just in name, but in spirit. The air felt different. Lighter. Like the walls had exhaled with me. The last time I saw Maya, if you could call it seeing, was through the window. From behind the curtain. A white van had pulled up on a Saturday morning. A man stepped out. The same kind of mover who'd come for the first pickup weeks before. He loaded the last of her boxes that had sat untouched in the garage, things she'd forgotten or pretended to forget. I didn't go outside. I didn't need to. Tessa sat in the passenger seat of a nearby car. Arms crossed. Expression carved out of sour pride. Maya wasn't there. She didn't even come to collect what was left of her. When the van pulled away, I stood for a long time in the doorway. Looking at the space where the boxes had been stacked, the concrete floor was clean. Almost too clean. For months. That corner had felt like a wound that refused to close. Now it was empty. And for the first time, it looked like healing. That evening, I poured a glass of whiskey and walked through every room slowly. Like I was reacquainting myself with my own life. The dining room table, once a battlefield of small arguments, now held a vase of fresh tulips. The living room shelves, once cluttered with us, photos, have now displayed a few of my own. A picture from a hiking trip. One from a friend's wedding. One from a quiet lake sunrise I'd gone to see alone. The silence wasn't lonely. It was honest. Word eventually filtered through mutual acquaintances. Elise had finalized her divorce. The court ruled in her favor, citing adultery with corroborating evidence. She got the house. Primary custody. And, as someone told me, a financial settlement that left Trent in ruins. He moved out of state somewhere, quiet. somewhere far away from the people who now knew the truth. Maya didn't fare much better. Jobless. Disgraced. She was back living with her mother, Lillian, in the same suburban home she once called a prison of expectations. I heard from a mutual friend that she'd been trying to find freelance work, but no one wanted the baggage that came with her name. The world may forgive mistakes, but it has a long memory for hypocrisy. Her friends Naomi. A few others had stopped posting photos with her. The people who once defended her with fiery certainty now kept their distance. I suppose it's easier to side with truth once it stops being inconvenient. Sometimes I wondered if she still thought of me. Maybe. Maybe not. I imagine she thought more about what she lost: the house, the safety, the illusion of control. She'd once said I was predictable, like it was a flaw. Now, I realized predictability had saved me. It was the steady rhythm that kept me from drowning in chaos. A friend sent me a screenshot one day. Maya had posted something on a new account. Is greater than. Some people will destroy you and then call it closure. Healing is forgiving them anyway. I didn't reply. Didn't react. Because that wasn't healing, it was rewriting. And I'd spent too long living in stories that weren't true. What I learned, what this whole ordeal carved into me, is that the real revenge was never the Facebook post. That was just the spark. The real revenge was everything that came after staying calm when they screamed, being methodical when they schemed, letting silence do what shouting never could. I remembered Marcus's words during one of our last calls: "You've already won. Ethan, you just haven't noticed yet." He was right. Winning wasn't about seeing her punished. It was about finally living without the constant hum of anxiety. The waiting for the next excuse, the next manipulation. I repainted the guest room where she used to keep her vision board and incense, covered the pale purple walls with a deep forest green. The first brushstroke felt like erasing something toxic. I replaced her framed quote, "Times, trust the universe," times, with a map of the national parks I planned to visit that year. I didn't trust the universe anymore. I trusted evidence. And I trusted myself. Summer arrived quietly. The neighborhood bloomed again. Kids' bikes reappeared on sidewalks. And the same neighbors who'd whispered during the scandal now waved from their lawns. Time has a way of making even the most public chaos fade into background noise. One evening in July, I found myself sitting on the back porch with a cup of coffee, watching the light sink behind the trees. The cicadas hummed. My phone buzzed once a new message request. I almost ignored it. But curiosity won. It was from an old coworker who'd heard the story. She wrote, "Times, you handled that better than most would. I don't know if you realize it, but what you did telling the truth helped people, even people who'll never admit it." I read it twice and set the phone down. Maybe that was true. Maybe not. But I knew one thing for certain. I hadn't told the truth for anyone else's sake. I told it for my own. I used to think peace meant silence, that if the noise stopped, I'd feel calm. But peace, I've learned, is knowing you could speak, could expose, could fight, and choosing not to, because you no longer need to. Maya once said I was too logical, too restrained, that I didn't feel enough. What she didn't understand was that feeling everything doesn't mean acting on it. Sometimes the strongest thing you can do is nothing at all. It's been months now. The story that once defined me has become something I rarely talk about. The post that went viral is buried under hundreds of newer scandals. I've started seeing someone new, someone kind, grounded, with no trace of chaos in her eyes. I don't compare her to Maya. I don't need to. When I tell her about that time in my life, I keep it brief. It was messy, I say, but it taught me how to protect my peace. She smiles. And that's enough. Some nights, when the house is still, I'll catch my reflection in the kitchen window, the same window where I once stood, phone in hand, wondering if posting those photos was a mistake. Now, when I see that reflection, I see someone else entirely, not a victim, not an avenger, just a man who finally stopped mistaking endurance for love. I turn off the lights, lock the door, and head upstairs. The bed feels larger now, not emptier, just open, waiting. I sleep easily. They thought I was a doormat. They found out I was a strategist. And I sleep very, very well. Story 2. At my mother's 60th birthday. Start today. Your $5. 500 paycheck and all future bonuses go to the family fund. Or you're out, she said, lifting a glass. You're not serious, I said in a whisper. My brother, however, nodded next to her, without saying another word. I got up and walked away. They made a panic call a few hours later. She didn't even blink when I whispered, "You're not serious." holding onto the table's edge so tightly that my knuckles turned white. My mom, looking stunning in a gold gown. As an early birthday present, she undoubtedly made me pay for the past 6 months. Surrounded by a dozen family members. Standing at the head of the long table and raising her glass as if to toast a promotion next to her. With a smug expression and no sign of embarrassment. My older brother Julian nodded. "I mean it," she said, grinning as though it were a momentous occasion. "We're starting a new chapter today. The future lies in the family fund. And you'll be the cornerstone of it." Michael. Everyone in the room chuckled as if she had made a clever toast. As if this wasn't a financial hostage situation during a birthday dinner. And I was part of it. Slowly, I got to my feet. My chair screamed as it scraped the tile floor. "You're kidding?" I looked around and repeated. Carlos abruptly became very interested in my cousin's wine glass after she simply turned away. "No," Mom said plainly. Then shrugged a little. "Families act in this way. So it's only fair that you've been doing well. We support one another in taking assistance. In this family, things had always been one way. I'm giving," Julian then said. "We're trying to build something bigger than just individual success." While folding his arms. "To the family. You owe it." I didn't respond. I simply grabbed my coat from the chair's back, turned, and left. I continued walking down the hallway despite my mother's voice calling my name. I went directly to my car, turned on the ignition, and drove away. No place to go. Right away. A few hours later, I was sitting on the edge of my bed in the dark. My phone began to ring. Mom. Then Julian. But then again, and once more, until the text finally began. "Give us a call back. There is an urgent situation. You can't simply walk away like that. Michael. We must speak. Something has occurred." That night, I didn't pick up the phone. Not when Mom sent 5 consecutive texts feigning concern. Not when Julian's voicemail began with, "Calm down, Mike," and ended with a curt, "You're acting too young." Since this was nothing new. This was no impromptu tantrum at a birthday dinner. Years of covert exploitation masquerading as love culminated in this. "Allow me to return you. I am a 2-year-old systems engineer employed by a Seattle-based high-performance cloud architecture company. After taxes and bonuses, the base pay is $5. $500 per month. Significant. I do what I do well. Not ostentatious, but reliable. In Belltown. I've been making rent payments on a modest studio. Living below my income. I make a budget. I preserve. I'm not a party animal. I don't waste money. Because I've been supporting my family for the last 8 years. It was little at first. Mikhail, your brother just needs a little assistance, paying the rent this month. Honey, he has a job in between." Julian left his 3rd startup job at that point because he felt that the corporate structure stifled his creativity. "Mikhail, my dear, is it possible for you to float the down payment for the new family vehicle? Following the tax return, we will reimburse you." Warning. They didn't. 5 years have passed since then. Do they still drive that vehicle? Call it nonetheless. As if I had never even sat in it before. After Dad's death, things became more heated. Abruptly. Aneurysm. Not a warning. Someone had to step in. So I did. At 25. I was still making student loan payments. Abruptly. I found myself paying the mortgage on a home I didn't occupy. Julian. He is in mourning. 2 weeks after the funeral, according to Mom, he and his girlfriend traveled to Cancun to grieve. I made a steady, silent payment because I believe that's what good sons do. Mom would always say things like, "Your father would be so proud of you," or "Your brother isn't as lucky as you." Whenever I tried to back off, "He requires additional assistance." Support that word. It started to mean sacrifice your peace so we don't have to change. Julian burned through 3 failed businesses and never once held a full-time job for more than a year. He called himself a serial entrepreneur. But he was just a serial spender. Fancy suits. New tech networking events in Napa Valley. All paid for by me. Even if no one said it aloud. One time, he literally sent me a Venmo request, labeled Family Legacy Expansion. It was for $1. Lambe. I turned it down. He texted, "Wow. Way to be a team player." 5 minutes later, my mom called. "What's wrong with you?" "Michael, you're being spiteful while Julian is attempting to construct something." I became aware of something unsightly at that point. This family didn't have a son like me. The donor was me. The bank, the person they could blame for the carelessness of everyone else. It was therefore not shocking when the birthday dinner took place. This was the first time they had made such a statement in public. It wasn't the first family fund. It had been there all along. It was simply unspoken before. Their needs. My bonuses. And my paycheck. Their way of life. My limits. Negotiable. Now. However, right now, they were placed in institutions. My servitude was formalized. As if I were an employee. What was worse about it? The fact that they expected me to smile about it was even worse. To toast to it, and raise my glass. To express my gratitude for allowing me to finance their lives. That's why I didn't say anything more. My cousin Jess sent me a message the following morning. Quiet kind. Avoids family drama most of the time. I wanted to check in. I heard you left early from the party. Is everything all right? I gave one sentence in response. As if it were an inheritance. They attempted to claim my income. She called right away. Chaos apparently broke out after I left. Julian's speech about family unity was an attempt to salvage the moment. Mom was in tears. Uncle Ray made a passive-aggressive remark about how selfish the younger generation is. Julian then declared in front of everyone that I had consented to begin making regular contributions to the family fund that week. Then, quiet, since I hadn't, nothing had been agreed to by me, stated that when I failed to return, the atmosphere became icy. Nobody was sure what to do. They bided their time. They made a call. They went into a panic. Julian then reportedly began editing a spreadsheet named Michael's Contributions after logging into the family's shared Google Drive. Totusin, Afirio2 looked like a budget line for my money, as though I were a resource. I got an envelope 3 days later. My mother's typewritten letter was inside. It's not an email. It was a letter. Not a call. Dear Micah, we're worried about you, was the first line. I had embarrassed her at her birthday party. It continued that I needed to learn how to share my success if I wanted to stay in this family, and that my actions were hurtful and disruptive. She used terms like financial empathy and emotional maturity. You've always been the reliable one, she said. You have greater responsibility as a result. What's the kicker? By Friday, we anticipate the first contribution to be deposited. The routing information will be sent by Julian. Don't apologize. No recognition of the error of this. Simply put, entitlement to expectations. As if I were a worker who didn't reach a quota, I slipped the letter into the trash, folded it, and put it back in the envelope. Then I took a step that I ought to have taken years earlier. I had a plan. That night, I didn't get much sleep. Anger was no longer the only emotion. Clarity was the key. It felt like a betrayal to leave. As if I had been gaslighted for so long. However, now it felt like oxygen. And I wasn't going to just disappear. They wanted a family fund. Fine. They would never forget what I gave them. I redirected my paycheck to a new account at a different bank by calling my HR department the following morning. One member of my family was unaware of its existence. I silently closed the previous one. After that, I signed a larger one-bedroom lease over the phone with my leasing agent. No shared spaces. Nah, roommates. Nah. Could we spend the weekend at your house? Mike, from Julian's never-ending list of unpaid business associates. The actual move. However, I reserved a seat at Mom's favorite, pricey bistro for lunch. She pleaded with me to take her there on her 58th birthday. Only this once. Due to tradition, I sent the family group chat a message. Yes. We did right after having one. Let's have a conversation. Tomorrow at 1 p.m. for lunch. I'll pay for it almost immediately. Julian gave a thumbs up in response. I'm glad you're finally coming around. Mom said, My dear, please bring the first deposit slip. I learned all I needed to know from that. They believed they still had me. I arrived the following day wearing a fitted suit. I didn't have to. I wanted to look them in the eye as their story fell apart. But I never wear suits outside of conferences. Mom was already at the table with a queenly smile. Julian was sitting next to her and looking through what appeared to be printed spreadsheets. I took a seat and remained silent. Michael. Mom began grabbing my hand. This is excellent. I always knew you would come to your senses. Even though I know emotions were running high. Your father is exactly like you. You get it duty to the family. Julian moved a piece of paper across the table. He sipped his drink and said nonchalantly, Here's a draft of the monthly transfers. We took into account your previous 3 bonuses. It costs a reasonable $2,800 a month, which includes utilities, groceries, and rent. I would hardly have enough for myself as a result. And it wasn't just that. Tears were shed. Bonuses in excess of $10. Ling ling ling. 70% goes to the fund. Consulting or freelancing 60%. Modest. Julian smiled and repeated. I wanted to turn the tables because of that. I folded my arms and leaned back. Just to make sure I understood, I said slowly. Okay. What is the role of the family fund? Mom blinked. It helps everyone. Who are all of them? She said that I'm not working at the moment due to my sciatica. And your brother's startup is still in development. And I didn't lose my job because Uncle Ray did. I explained everything else. Michael. Avoid being petty. I read the fine print and picked up the contract. In fact, Julian had attempted to construct it as though it were a legally binding contract. As if he were overseeing a trust fund. Is this a joke? I asked bluntly. Julian changed his face. Don't start, man. You concurred? I disagreed. You announced it. You all clapped like I was Santa Claus. Before we could explain you departed. I went out. You attempted to handcuff my financial future. So I intervened. To a family full of grown-ups who wouldn't accept accountability? Quiet. Mom leaned in. Her voice soft. Manipulative. Sweetheart. You've always been the strong one. You've always been there for us. That's right. I said. And I'm finished. Her eyes widened. Please pardon me. I dropped the contract onto my untouched plate and got up. I've finished paying for Julian's unsuccessful tour. I'm done footing the bill for your emergency pretended vacations. I'm particularly tired of acting like I'm in love. The same amount of sacrifice? Michael, she let out a gasp. Don't speak to your mother in a rude manner. No. You are no longer allowed to blame me. After years of draining me? You have no right to call me ungrateful. Julian got to his feet. Hey. Bro. Relax. I looked over at him. You are 35 years old. Adult up. Get a job. Julian. You're not creating a legacy. You're holding on to one that was made by someone else. He tightened his jaw. Do you believe that you are superior to everyone? No. But I'm better than this. I said. I took out a folder made of manila and placed it on the table. What is that? Mom inquired. Receipts. Every transfer. I said. Every present. Each and every loan. You promised to repay more than $78. Ling ling ling. I calculated it. Julian gave a snort. Are you now keeping score? I gave him a direct look. Indeed. Since you never did? I turned to leave. His mother called my name. We didn't turn around that evening. The message began. Julian. Mom was embarrassed by you. You are behaving like a kid. This is only a phase. Mom. You'll settle down. Give me a call. Then there was quiet. Then 2 days later. Fear. Julian. More family ties. Or startup investors. We're leaving. The word had gotten out. I had stopped contributing to the fund. And you know who they all believed to be the true source of funding me without my name on it. The entire operation appeared to be a setup. And as a result, it ultimately collapsed. Uncle Ray and Aunt Carla called next. Followed by a voicemail from Mom that began calmly and ended with tears. Please. Michael. Your brother did something wrong. All we need is a little assistance to get through this quarter. After that, we can go over the numbers again. All right? No. No longer. The consequences were immediate. It was like removing a Jenga block from the base of the tower they had constructed on my back the moment I left that lunch. Everything started to fall apart quickly and loudly. That same afternoon, I switched my phone number. Not anymore. Would you mind speaking for a moment? Julian's voicemails. No more, Michael. That was not our intention. Mom texted. I had stopped playing cleanup. For the first time in years, I was finished. I had the silence. And it was wonderful. They didn't take it well. Though, not even close. By the end of that week, Julian had sent me an urgent email. Read about his company. Please. When investors discovered that I was no longer the primary financial backer, they withdrew their largest supplier and abandoned the project that I had been covertly funding for years. It turns out that Julian had been using my name in pitches without my consent. Saying things like, thanks to family support, we have 6 figures of runway. And my brother has us covered through Q4. Everyone is watching. All predicated on the idea that I would never leave. However, I did. And in a matter of days, the financial house of cards he constructed under my name fell apart. Mom began phoning burner numbers. I paid them all no attention. Then, the subject line appeared in an email. There is still time to correct this. What should be fixed? Your total reliance on me. You've believed for decades that I only exist to support your extravagant lifestyles. Nothing needed to be fixed. All that was to be claimed was freedom. I had moved into my new apartment in less than 2 weeks. larger than I required. Sleek and contemporary. Like a vault. It had a heavy door that locked. The kind of door that nobody trespasses through to use your Wi-Fi. Or spend the weekend in a crash. At last, I received my pay. I didn't figure out how much I needed to save for Julian's emergency phone upgrade or my mother's dental work before I went grocery shopping. I made an investment in new equipment for my side business. I signed up for a gym. Slept. Inhaled. I didn't see fatigue when I looked in the mirror for the first time. I was spotted. It was both beautiful and surreal. The family then started to fall apart. As if I were some sort of fountain. Uncle Ray called the man who once told me that money flows upward in families. You wanted to talk to me about how I handled the situation. I informed him that I would only communicate via email. Carla sent me a Facebook message to check on me. But he never got back to me. Said that Julian appeared to be a ghost, and that Mom was devastated. Despite hair differences, I left her on read cousin Jess. She texted you. And whatever you said to them rocked the whole family tree. I chuckled. It also didn't feel bitter for once. It was earned. Then the tipping point arrived. I received a call from an unidentified number a month after I disconnected them. I wouldn't normally respond, but I felt compelled to pick Michael up. Mom was the one. She spoke in a tiny, strange voice. I'm in your structure. All I want to do is talk. I nearly hung up. Nearly. Something within me. Though, there was a tiny portion that could still recall a time before the manipulation. Let her have 5 minutes. That was all. 5. She held a Tupperware container as if it were a peace offering while she waited in the lobby. My favorite rice and roast chicken were inside. Like I was a child again. She didn't grin. Didn't plead. Can we sit? I just said. In the corner. We discovered 2 chairs. I said nothing at all. She began slowly. I was unaware of the harm we were causing to you. Not at all. I arched an eyebrow. Required a financial collapse and public outcry for that. She grimaced. Yes. I am aware of how that sounds. After that, she took a folder out of her purse. Receipts. All of my transactions. Deposits. And transfers to pay off the mortgage. Julian's failed business ventures. She claimed that a friend had given her the cruise as a gift. A total of $78. Sabawusha. You kept records. Julian informed me. I didn't think he was real. I assumed you were simply being aloof. I examined the figures. Chilly. This was a matter of survival. My autopsy on finances. She went on. I don't expect forgiveness. I simply wanted to let you know. Now I see it. Everything. Then she said it. I thought I would never hear that one sentence. You were used by us. Not trusted. Not requested assistance. Utili said. She said. I wanted to think I was being a good mother. However, I was using you as a source of revenue. I referred to your pushback as ungrateful. Her voice broke. And I apologized sincerely. I remained silent. I simply sat there and let her confession ring like a church bell in my ears. The folder was left on the chair next to me by her. She left after that. Julian texted me 1 week later. Don't be theatrical. Just. You were correct? I'm beginning anew. This time. For real. Then a picture of him at a warehouse. Holding a clipboard while wearing a work vest. Minimum wage position. Real work. I grinned but didn't answer. Because they never understood this. Retaliation was not the reason for cutting them off. The topic was recuperation. It was about taking back a life that had been gradually robbed of its vitality, color, and independence. One request for Venmo at a time. I treated myself to dinner last Friday. An actual one. 1 table, candle, a glass of wine. While scrolling through apartment listings, I sat silently. I was able to move for the first time in my life. Not because I had to. My phone exploded. Jess sent a message. I'm proud of you. The match was lit by you. Allow them to experience the warmth. And I did. I still do. They assumed I would return. They did it every time. They pushed until a certain point each time I established a boundary. Every no turned into maybe every. This is the final instance. Became yet another anomaly. Not this time. Though, I vanished this time. And remained absent. And it drove them crazy for a while. We used to be close. And Mom cried as she texted, called, emailed, and left voicemails. Julian tried to force me back into the role I was born into by sending me a series of messages filled with guilt. The bank. The backup plan. And the fixer. I paid them all no attention. And they became anxious because, for the first time, their plan had not worked out when the silence lasted longer than they had anticipated. Furthermore, I didn't rush back to make things right. The finest aspect, my life immediately improved. For reasons unrelated to me, my account balance stopped declining. At last, I had my weekends. I began to eat better, sleep better, and smile more. I was no longer merely getting by. I was getting better. At last, I had space to construct my life, not theirs. I resumed my old pastimes, took a genuine holiday, purchased items for myself that I once referred to as needless luxuries, because it was always someone else's crisis. I went back to dating someone who asked me what I loved instead of what I earned. And I experienced a wild and alien feeling for the first time in my adult life. After several months, Mom wrote me a handwritten letter that was smeared with tears, which I didn't realize were there because we were barely surviving. Julian is also having trouble. She referred to it as a miscommunication. I referred to it as 10 years of financial strain that I was never permitted to question. The family missed me, so she pleaded with me to come home for Thanksgiving. That without you, nothing feels quite right. For the first time, everything in my world felt just right, and I nearly burst out laughing. Not long afterward, Julian became dark. He told me that after the startup failed, he moved in with a friend. No income. No more investors. She only mentioned that he was at last discovering what life without a safety net is like. Not with me. Excellent. Give him the same weight and strain that I used to bear by myself as he grows. Then perhaps he'll get it. Perhaps he will finally understand. He might not. But saving him is no longer my responsibility. The reality, I was never loved by them. I did something for them that they adored. And the moment I ceased to produce, ceased to bend into sacrifice, they became icy, accused me of being unfaithful, because saying no is the greatest sin in their world. However, I would rather be despised for leaving than adored for being a doormat. And now, they now have to live with that decision. I also live with mine. I sipped the most expensive coffee I could find last week while sitting by myself in my favorite cafe. I grinned as well. It was because of the money I spent that day. Not because of the scenery or the silence. I owned it. I earned it. Spent money on me. Not sucked into some endless family abyss. Not stolen in the name of solidarity. Only mine. And to me, that was freedom. Even though it might not seem like much to others. The last truth is as follows. Your paycheck is not something you owe your family. Your peace is not due to them. Just because you share DNA doesn't mean you have to live your entire life with them. They owe you nothing. As soon as they begin to treat you more like an asset than a human being. They refer to me as cold. I was referred to as heartless. They accuse me of being ungrateful. All right. Permit them. Being ungrateful is preferable to being used. I'd rather be by myself than exhausted. I prefer to be free. Totally. With strength. Unreservedly free. I am. 2.